Good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde. Of course, we are all aware that the NARD, National Association of Resident Doctors, have called out their members on strike because, as far as they are concerned, government hasn't really significantly or sufficiently responded to the issues that they raised, including the memorandum of agreement that they have had over who should do what within what time and all of that. For about 3 months or thereabout, nothing has been done. The strike has started, but then the effect has already begun to show. Here are some.
It's unusually quiet at the Alex Ekweme Federal University Teaching Hospital, a once busy area in Abakaliki, the Ebonyi state capital. Obviously, this is indicative of the effect of the nationwide industrial action by resident doctors on the government-owned facility. Although other medical personnel and consultants are attending to patients, the service is skeletal.
Came here as early as around 7:50 or so, and I'm still here. It's almost 1 o'clock. I have not been attended to. And I believe if the doctors were not on strike, I would have been attended to by now. And as well, and I'm not even sure if I will be attended to today. Maybe it will be deferred till next week. So I'm urging the government to do something concerning the strike, try as much as they can to settle the doctor, meet with their demands as well, so that the patients, because if the doctors are not there, how are we going to treat those that are sick?
I've waited here for long. I don't know whether the doctor I want to see will be around.
This is a very dangerous period. Hunger is covering everywhere, no money, and people are dying. People will be dying more if strike is embarked now.
Over 24 hours after the commencement of the strike, nothing has changed in terms of reconciling the differences between the resident doctors and the federal government.
We're not moving ahead. So there's a fundamental problem somewhere. Wherever it is coming from, I don't know. But NAD is saying that we are no longer interested. We want evidence-based fundamental rights to be done, given to us as what we demand.
Like the Alex Ekweme Federal University Teaching Hospital, the action is also affecting services and other public healthcare institutions in Lagos, Bayelsa, Cross River and Plateau states. The association blames the industrial action on the inability of the federal government to implement the agreement it reached with the union since the last strike was suspended.
If you go through the NAD communique, there are about 17 burning issues, which led to the strike. We have a circular from the Federal Ministry of Health that removed those house officers from the scheme of civil service. So which means that in terms of their remuneration and their welfare will no longer be determined by the civil service. So we feel that this is not acceptable. We have in so many centers, as we speak now, resident doctors that are being owed more than 6 months' salary.
And of course, the hazard allowance. You won't believe that till now, a doctor's hazard allowance is still 5,000 naira.
Both parties may have to consider those who are at the receiving end of the strike and find a lasting solution.
Well, those are some of the reactions so far. And the first question that, would arise on the mind of anyone watching all of this would be, of all 17, what has been done by who? I would assume, for instance, that since the Ministry of Health and or Ministry of Labor and not the Ministry of Finance, not the Office of the Accountant General, I'm wondering what part of that agreement that the federal government had with the National Association of Resident Doctors had to do with collaborating with other ministries, departments, and agencies that are not directly involved in this matter? What kind of conversations were agreed should be taken? And who are the people that ought to do what they needed to do to avert this kind of action again? Just about how many days ago we heard another outbreak of gastroenteritis in Sokoto State. We had this conversation with the chief executive of the primary health agency responsible for dispensing COVID-19 vaccines all over the nation. And he said NARD members are a significant team of people to help in helping us to get ahead of the challenge of COVID-19 that is only just getting worse by the day. What kind of conversations should be happening with whom? Is it only the executive? Does the legislature have a role in this matter? So many questions begging answers. Markwe, good morning.
Good morning, Ayo. You know, you've asked a number of questions. Some of them have been answered. So, for instance, when you ask, does the legislature have a role in the matter? Don't forget that one of the main interventions we have seen since NARD began their strike sometime last year, because this is an ongoing matter from last year, when they started talking about how they need to be properly prepared for COVID-19. And that's when they came to the fore that their hazard allowance was only 5,000 naira. There have been agitations, even from members, well-meaning members of the public, that 5,000 naira cannot be the hazard allowance that we earmark for our doctors. And so there have been concerted efforts on the part of other people, maybe apart from the executive arm of government, to pay them more than 5,000 naira hazard allowance. I know that there have been extended conversations on that. One of the champions of that have been members of the National Assembly, spearheaded by the Speaker of the National Assembly. So it is of the House of Representatives, beg your pardon. He's the Speaker of the House of Representatives. So you have to ask, despite his intervention, because I do know that sometime this year he was also very much engaged in talks with them, and he even went to their office. We saw all of that on television. Despite all of that intervention, not much, not much. Plenty of motion, no movement. You have to ask, are we really sincere when we deal with striking members of whatever unions? I've always told you, Ayo, that way before now, my stance has always been that I never support doctor strike, because unlike any other union that will go on strike, whatever it is that they do, for instance, if teachers go on strike, the children are just at home, they are idle. Yes, they can get up to mischief, but the children, they will still be fine. Whenever it is that they come back, they can continue from where they stopped. But for healthcare, you've seen people there. People don't like to go to the hospital. It's not their choice to be in the hospital. They go there because they have health challenges. And I'm sure that people want to get better. Now, if for whatever reason they're not attended to and their situation deteriorates, it means that they could lose their lives in the process. Lives that are lost can never come back. So their strikes have far-reaching implications that are irreversible. Yes, you can say that years lost for children cannot be reversed, but hey, they can always catch up one way or another. How do you gain back lives that have been lost? So as a result of that, I have never been in support of strikes. However, when you look at the insincerity with which we deal with our doctors, it's like as if we also put a gun to their heads to say, hey, you signed up to a Hippocratic oath. You cannot do this. But what have we done to show the urgency, the primacy of their position in society? What have we done to raise them to that? We can't just place them on a pedestal. We have to support that pedestal with everything that we have. And I don't think that the doctors are being unreasonable. When you listen to some of the things that they're asking for, I do not think that they're being unreasonable. Right now, they're saying that they're being moved. They're not going to be paid salaries as housemen while doing their internship in hospitals, although they have graduated. These years will not count for them. Have there been any measures to engage with them? Whenever it is we take these decisions, do we seek their own opinion? Do we seek to make them understand why those decisions are being taken? And then when you now look at the lukewarm, almost tepid response that we get from government, we have not been put on notice for the strike. The question is, have you fulfilled the memorandum of action which you agreed with them in the first instance? That's a key question. When they were announced, is it from last week that they were going to go on strike? Did anybody reach out through the back door, even if, yes, we know that things have to be done formally, that, hey, guys, this is not the way to go. We cannot afford this. This is COVID-19 third strain. There's cholera everywhere. There's gastroenteritis, which you're dealing with. All of these things are there. Do we have to get to this? Do we really have to get to this? I want to say yes, that strikes are becoming overused. Yes, we can say that. And then when you look at the fact that they also involve people that ordinarily should not be a part of the strike, for instance, state governments that claim that they have already met what needs to be done. But when you also hear some other state governments who are owing their doctors 20 months worth of salaries, 18 months, you have to ask, are we really dealing with sincerity here? Or we're just paying lip service? Whose primary concern? Who are the champions of our doctors? Who are the champions of our medical sector? Ideally, we would have thought it would be the ministers and the, what they call that now, the commissioners of health in their different areas. They should want to see that they leave a legacy. Is this the legacy they want to leave? This is, I don't know, we're at a watershed point in our history. And I believe that this period of our history, COVID-19 period, will have heroes. Will there be one of them? These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves this morning. Ayo.
Well, more and more questions, Malkwe, no doubt about it. When you talk about who are the people that ought to be champions, I don't even know if we should have one or two. Because in every system, there is supposed to be a chain of activities. For this memorandum of action or memorandum of agreement, whichever one it is, there is a role for the Ministry of Labor, is there. There is a role for the Ministry of Health, is there. And who are the people that are supposed to do what? There is a role for the Ministry of Finance, who is supposed to ensure the money is assigned to these doctors go to them as and when due. There is a role for the Accountant General's office. Who are the people that are supposed to do what they're supposed to do in order for us to not get to this? The only thing that this is speaking, so to speak, is that, look, as far as we are concerned, we are more interested in the state, we are more interested in the institutions than the people who run the institutions. Is that supposed to be? Are we asking for robots as opposed to human beings that can empathize with people and ensure that their lives are protected and the lives of the people that they are paid to protect are also protected? They also have a right, just as Malkwe has said, to say, you know what, we want to protect ourselves as well. Do we always have to get to a point of strike every time? Don't forget that we had brain drain in the 80s. Shouldn't we put this to a complete stop and encourage homegrown everything? Questions, questions, questions. We understand that there are interventions already going on about this matter to make sure that at least we get ahead of the issue so it doesn't get any worse. It's already bad. Can we just end it today? Well, more issues in the papers this morning. Let's begin right away. Mostly lead with politics this morning. There are a few exceptions anyway. Let's begin with the Nigerian Tribune. That is talking about PDP governors weighed in as 7 NEC members resign. That's the lead of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. There you have it. National Youth Leader demands Secondus resignation. Saraki, Anyim, Imoke, Dankwabo meet aggrieved Oyo factions. What's going on? Well, the issue is out there for all of the conversations that are necessary. You remember just, I think it was last week, we had a conversation with members of the PDP on this issue, and it would seem like the issue is just getting started. But there you have it on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Perhaps related is right under the picture you see there, APC crisis. Or court asked to nullify ward congresses, dissolve Boni-led committee. Stories on page 4. SWC suspends 17 chapter chairmen in Akwa Ibom. Find all of that on page 4 of the paper this morning, among several other issues you'll find on the front page. Right above the nameplate, NAS opposition to e-transmission of election results tantamount to coup. Ascribed to who? Wike, governor of Rivers State. That's the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Well, I seem a bit spoiled for choice this morning. I'm looking at the front page of the Vanguard, and I want to review it for other reasons. At least something to cheer on the front page. No, it's not in the headlines. But take a look at this. 2023, fresh troubles in PDP as crisis fester in APC. So you might want to read the riders to get a bit more insight. 6 PDP national officers resign APC wooing them. Secondus must go. That's according to PDP youth leader. PDP governors sue for peace, schedule emergency meeting. APC crisis worsened in Rivers, Bayelsa, Akwa Ibom, Osun, Ondo. Rivers faction secures order against congresses. Chieftain explains court order stopping Bayelsa congresses. Akwa Ibom APC suspends 17 local government caretaker chairmen, 2 others. Chieftains passed no confidence vote on National Caretaker Secretary Akpanodo Edehe. Osun APC group accuses faction of buying up forms. So it looks like it's just trouble everywhere. Look at that. The headline is just apt. 2023, fresh troubles in PDP as crisis fester in APC. But that's not what I'm interested in this morning. Take a look at that picture. Brume, Oborodudu win bronze, silver. When you talk about people taking away our shame, these are the ladies who God is using to take away our shame as a country. I mean, all the woes that have befallen us at the Olympics, these are out at the Olympics. At least we're on the medals table. And that's thanks to S.A. Brume, who won bronze in the long jump, and Oborodudu, I'm trying to remember her full name now, Blessing Oborodudu, who were both celebrating after winning bronze and silver medals, respectively, in long jump and wrestling events. So sports is on the front page this morning, and for very good reason too, because these women, I have to underline there, have brought honor to Nigeria. Look at this. IMF creates fresh loan opportunity for Nigeria. That's also there. You have a number of other stories, but maybe I should let that good story linger on our minds for a while. Mr. and Mrs. is also on the front page there. Darling, your tea is ready, but I'm afraid we've run out of sugar. That's according to Mrs. And Mr. says, let me have it like that. Didn't I tell you that you remain the only sugar in my tea? Oh, Mr. can be sweet sometimes, you know. Well, you have a number of other stories at the back page. Thankfully, these women will get some rewards. Federal government announces increased cash rewards for Team Nigeria medalists. Gold will get $15,000, silver $10,000, bronze $7,500. And look at this. It's also a story on what challenge Oborodudu had to overcome. Look, Oborodudu defies knee injury to win silver. Minister to pay for her surgery. Hopefully, we will not need any reminding to fulfill our promises and also to do right by those who have brought us honor. Let's leave it there for the Vanguard newspapers.
Mrs. is the one taking the lead in all the stories, the sports stories you took this morning, adding sugar to our tea as a nation, in a manner of speaking. The Guardian newspaper also leads with the politics today. Fresh battles rage for soul of PDP, APC ahead 2023. That's what you have on the front page there. Court asked to nullify APC states congresses, dissolve Boni-led caretaker committee. We want to find out who has gone to court on that matter. Secondus leadership of PDP crashes as 10 NWC members disown him. 7 others resign. PDP, crisis is being addressed. Governor's call for calm. And APC woos 7 PDP national officers. Buni's APC delegates escape mob attack in Kano. Akwa Ibom APC SEC passes no confidence vote on National Secretary Udoedehe. And Osun progressives ask Boni to reject outcome of congresses. The story continues on page 2 of the paper this morning. That picture you see is not of people going from the market. It's of residents fleeing their community that was attacked on Saturday night by gunmen suspected to be herders in Irigwe Basa Local Government Council of Plateau State yesterday. Under that picture, you find poor, not rich, benefit from fuel subsidy. Economists counter FG. That story continues on page 2. Records show how previous price hikes have worsened inflation, unemployment. Fuel subsidy removal endangers survival of million households. That's what you have there. You may want to find out the details and determine what side of the divide you would want to stay on this matter. And on page 7, you have INEC begs NBA CJN to intervene in Anambra Guba cases. What's that all about? The details you have on the inside pages. Nigeria does not have enough COVID-19 isolation centers yet to learn, say resident doctors. Do they know what they're talking about? The details you'll find on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Well, let's take a look through, excuse me, look at the leadership this morning. PDP in disarray as 7 national officers quit, cite exclusion. Youth leader calls for sack of national chairman. Secondus fires back, says some members want to erode party's gain ahead of 2023. Will address grievances, is according to the party. You see right there some story from the leadership itself. Leadership award will further energize me. That's from Wike. Look at this. CGN moves against judgment leaks. That's also there on the front page of leadership. And if you look at what's on the front page of Daily Trust, third wave. NYC camps on red alert as 109 test positive for COVID-19. Yeah, that's what's on the front page of Daily Trust. Shut camps to check spread. Experts urge federal government. NCDC records 851 cases in 2 days, 11 deaths in 1 day. So if there's any reason why we should take non-pharmaceutical measures more seriously, these are the figures we're seeing right on the front pages right now. 11 deaths in 1 day. Government may roll out lockdown measures soon, and I don't think that anyone wants that, so perhaps we should all start behaving. We're safeguarding members, this is according to NYC, so there's some response there. Heavy rainfall, Kano residents lament as flood destroys property. Uncertainty as UAE lifts flight ban on Nigeria 5 months after. And a story I shouldn't read out there. I'm not even going to read it out. Let's take a look at what's just beneath the nameplate. APC chieftain asks court to nullify Congress's disband Buni committee. And if you're interested in more politics, fresh crisis hits PDP as 7 NWC members resign. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust newspapers.
Quick run through Nigeria News Direct. PDP crisis deepens as 7 national officers resign. That's the lead of Nigeria News Direct this morning. Stories on page 3. We have engaged aggrieved members. That's would ascribe to the spokesperson of the party. Saraki-led committee gives Makinde month-end ultimatum to reconcile party chapter. That's what you have leading the paper this morning, and several others. Above the nameplate, FG unveils 50 naira revenue stamp charge to boost nation's economy. What does that mean? You find the details on the inside pages. And quickly, Blueprint newspaper, fallout of Umahi Ayade Matawale's defection. 7 national officers quit as PDP crisis deepens. The story we've taken before. That story you find on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper this morning, and as well as the Daily Times newspaper. Very, very quickly, PDP in crisis as 7 NWC members resign. Insists Secondus must resign as party chairman, among several others you find on the front page of the paper this morning. Well, that's the papers today. We're back for the issues. Do stay with us.
Well, that's certainly what we're sinking our teeth into right now. It would seem that we're at the start of a third wave, and right now we are dealing with a strain which has been identified as a strain of concern by the World Health Organization. So far, the numbers are not looking good. We've recorded 851 cases in 2 days, and 11 deaths, 11 people dead in one day. So Lagos State did say before now that they were recording an average of 6 deaths per day. So definitely something to give us a lot of concern and something which we shouldn't just take lightly. How can we curb, the spread of COVID-19, especially this particularly dangerous Delta variant? We have with us this morning Professor Miriam Aminu, who is the head of Department of Microbiology, Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. And she's also the Deputy Dean, Faculty of Life Sciences, Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. She joins us via Zoom. Ma'am, you're welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Good morning. We also have with us right here in our Abuja studios, Dr. Akelia Ishako, who is an epidemiologist and also a senior lecturer at the Nasarawa State University. Dr. Ishako, welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you, Maokwe, for having me.
Well, this is the news that we have now. And it looked like, COVID-19 was tapering down. All of a sudden, we're hearing of a third wave. We've seen how it has dealt very deadly blows to some countries, and it would seem that it is now right here with us. What has happened? Did we let down our guard? How did this particular virus come back so virulently?
Yeah, so just like you used the idiomatic expression of lowering down our guards, is because we have actually opened up our borders, both land and air borders and sea borders. And we abandoned our non-pharmaceutical intervention measures. We, Nigerians just have a nonchalant attitude towards the COVID-19 preventive measures. In fact, the no mask, no entry has become a gate pass only for people that just want to enter corporate vicinities and all what have you. So on the individual side, we have lowered our guards. Even on the government side, we have lowered our guards in terms of not going into aggressive surveillance. Maokwe, if I asked you the national question, how many samples have we tested? You'll be surprised that we have not tested enough. Still up to today, some states are not even logging in samples. They are not testing. So our testing profile has gone down. We are battling with a major threat to public health, which is misinformation and fake news. The issue of vaccine hesitancy is there, lower coverage of vaccine. So it is like a confounder of so many multifactorial factors that has actually impede the fight against the COVID-19. And then here are we on a third wave due to circulation of a Delta variant, which is the transmissibility profile is very high, and then it has a very short incubation time. If we learn from India experience, if we learn from other countries that have battled with Delta variants, Nigerians need to buckle up, because more cases, we are going to experience more seropositivity cases. And then another aspect that we have neglected too is on the mortality surveillance. So we have to look at our death rates, our case fatality rates. How many people are dying? Where are they dying? Are we actually doing autopsy, the oral autopsy and the normal autopsy? So we need actually a national policy now to be able to nip this on the board.
Well, I don't know whether this is already grown into a full-bloom flower, because nipping it in the bud, when we're seeing already 11 deaths in one day, this is now becoming some average of sorts. But let me come to you, Professor Aminu. Dr. Ishaku here has laid the premise upon which this Delta variant is spreading. Now, if we're to sort them out one after the other, are you happy with the steps that we're taking so far to try and curb, to put a lead on the spread of this particular variant?
Thank you so very much. Well, the government need to scale up the testing ability, because as I can see that the RDT, the rapid detection test they have deployed, it is being used in a few states. It is very, very important that they increase, all states they should deploy that rapid test to be used in all states, in all workplaces, in orientation camps, in schools, every facility where people crowd together. They have to scale up the use of that RDT to quickly detect and detect cases, their contact, and also do surveillance. Surveillance is very, very important. I think the federal government need to scale up the surveillance part of this COVID-19 fight, because I think that is what they are not doing right. Vaccination, we know, is very, very important. It's another one, because there are a lot of misinformation concerning the vaccination. I'm happy that the Moderna vaccine is here, and I hear that we are going to have the AstraZeneca is going to, we are going to have that too, and we are going to have the other vaccines that are coming up. The most important thing is that we should ensure that all individuals that are eligible get vaccinated. And the right thing to do, which we have not done, which the government has not done, is to reinstate the use of masks, to mandate the use of masks. This is highly important. And because, like Akiala said, we opened our borders. You know, our border is our first line of defense, and it is a source of concern. All these countries where we have red alert, like Brazil, Turkey, India, UK, where our Nigerians visit most frequently, they should ensure that people that come in from this point of entry and these countries, they are quarantined and they are tested. It's very, very important. So the federal government should scale up the surveillance, and then they should mandate the use of masks. It is time to mask up again. This is very, very important. And I think that we have not done so much concerning testing, which is very, very important when it comes to this variant. Because as it is, with the new variant, this Delta variant, new cases have been said to be risen by 70%, and hospitalization has increased by 36%. And I'm sure that is what we are having in Nigeria. Now, the federal government, we are not really testing to know if it is COVID-19 that has led to some deaths that we have seen. I can tell you that these 11 deaths that the government is reporting may not likely be the number of deaths that we have due to COVID-19. There are more deaths and more number of cases. So the federal government have to scale up the testing and surveillance on COVID-19. It is very, very important, because this virus, the spread of this virus is different from the signs of COVID. This Delta variant is different from other variants. For instance, this sense of smell, the loss of sense of smell, and the cough that we see with the other variants, this is not the symptoms we see with this new variant. So the federal government need to do a lot of surveillance, case tracing, and contact tracing to fish out those that are infected and quarantine and isolate them. It's very, very important, because this virus can spread. It has been found out that the transmissibility level of this virus is like 225% more than the other variant. And then because of this, the symptoms is not like others, so we may miss many cases. It means that the virus is going to spread widely and we'll have more deaths. So the federal government need to scale up its surveillance and then ensure that those that are eligible for the vaccine get vaccinated. Thank you.
A lot of issues which you have raised there. It looks like first the campaigns which went on earlier will have to be redone, because if you're saying that the symptoms which characterize the first outbreak are different from that of the second, especially this particular variant, the campaigns definitely have to be different, because then people were told, oh, coughing, if you experience coughing, if you experience sneezing, and things of the sort. So have you seen that concerted effort to alert the public that this particular variant is particularly different, and that, you know, the symptoms which you might experience this time around, because let's not forget that cholera is also around. Gastroenteritis is being reported in some states, and if stooling and vomiting is one of the things that we're supposed to be seeing with this Delta variant, how do people now begin to differentiate them separately from, say, the COVID-19 Delta variant?
Yeah, that's a very good one. It's very, very important that the federal government reinvigorate the risks of communication risks of COVID-19. The populace need to know, need to be told the symptoms of this variant, so that they have to be enlightened and educated on the risks, the transmissibility, because this virus, now, you know, before you used to say close contact, use face masks, but now the problem is that there are three important things that leads to the spread of this virus. Close contact is one. The second one is confined places because of lack of air circulation. And number three is crowded places. These three C. The most important thing is that the government need to communicate to the populace so that they will know the symptoms that they need to look out for, which is not like the loss of smell and coughing. So many people may think that it's not COVID-19 because the symptoms are different. So there has to be remediation of risk communication, improved surveillance, quarantine, and then surveillance sequencing, so that we will know the different strains that we are having that are causing the death and the new cases. So we need to communicate to the populace on the clinical features they need to see, they need to expect that is of this Delta variant. That is very, very important.
Dr. Ishaku, let me ask you two questions directly related to your field. First, we're seeing this particular variant. There are huge questions as to, you know, what has happened for this virus to mutate and becomes as deadly as it has. It's now even becoming even more deadly than it was before. One is about vaccines, because just a few days ago, we got over 4 million doses of Moderna vaccine here in Nigeria. And people are wondering, you know, it would seem that we're expecting different types of vaccine. We've had AstraZeneca, we're getting Moderna, we're expecting at some point Johnson & Johnson. Yeah, Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Only recently, Sinovac 2 was approved by NAFDAC, even though we don't know if we have, I don't think we've received any of the Sinovac. But I imagine that when they eventually come, that we will definitely accept them as well, since our own NAFDAC has put a seal of approval on it. How do you think that all of this numerous vaccines will work in our attempt to achieve herd immunity? Do you think that it's a wise idea to mix and match from different places? Yeah. Will that help our immunity levels? So just like variety is the spice of life, so I strongly believe in the field of vaccinology, variety. So you have different vaccines that have undergone clinical trials. It has been established its efficacy and safety. So having different vaccines is not a problem, but it's about the acceptability. So one key thing now is that we need to work on the acceptability of these vaccines and the availability. Mahokwe, I strongly believe, just as an addendum to what my mentor said, Professor Mariam, is that we need a kind of a robust strategic communication, which is a component of risk communication. So a lot of people may think we have different types of vaccines, so we're not going to take these vaccines. And then the issue of even vaccine hesitancy is here with us. So we need robust strategic communication. And so I want to prescribe this, that what stops us from even involving NGOs to drive this process, I met people wearing face masks. I asked them, why do you wear face masks? It's because I want to enter the bank. Somebody just removed his face mask and he was talking to me. He said, no, I have to remove the face mask to talk to you so that you can listen to me. I said, no, you need to cover your nose so that you don't spread anything. So those are the things. Time has come, just like in the era of HIV and AIDS. We look for NGOs, we look for partners to be able to drive this process. And I think that time has come for us to actually look for partners in terms of strategic communications to actually drive the risk communication component of it. 1, 2, we have been talking about testing. We have been under testing, which is quite sure. It is it is a non-fact nationally. Can we also get partners to be able to drive this process of testing? So I agree with you that we have like 5 vaccines now that have been approved. Their acceptability is going to be one thing, which it has to be driven by strategic communication. And secondly,
the availability. We just have 4 million doses. I watched keenly the presidential task force, talking about the 4 million doses. But I know that quite significant percentage of people lost their second dose of the first batch of the vaccine. So what happens to them? Are we still going to contact them for their second dose, or they are going to start, a kind of a fresh exercise? So by and large, it's about availability and the acceptability of the vaccines.
So I don't know where we are in this battle right now, because, I mean, our borders are still open. And it would seem that a lot of the cases which we have experienced are coming from abroad. I mean, look at the instance in Akwa Ibom, where they said that, they had how many cases overnight, and it was because of one returnee. And we understand that this particular strain spreads rather aggressively. I think 30% faster than the ordinary COVID in the first instance, and it's even more dangerous. Well, should we be looking at a closure of our borders again?
Yeah, so to me, closing border does not solve the problem. Closing borders will also, I don't want to look at the socio-economic or the economic component of closing borders, but from the public health point of view, is for us to tighten our borders, our public health surveillance within our airports. I was here some months ago, and I said that what stops us from even having a testing panels in our airports? What stops us that for every returnee that is coming, we test immediately and also do sequencing? Let me share something with you that will amaze you, although this is a national TV. A friend of mine was boarding, and he got his test results, and there was no test being done while returning from a nearby African country. No test was done, but a test was given to him.
Wow.
Do you understand? A test was given to him. So people have a way of, cutting corners. I may have somebody working in a testing center in the US, in the UK, in any part of Europe. I want to travel. I may ask him, hey, friend, can you get me a test batch, this thing? I want to travel back home to Nigeria. And then, so I want the federal government, the presidential task force, to think of establishing a testing panel in our airports, so that we can be able to actually go into that. Secondly, my mentor talked about sequencing. We are not only talking about testing now, we're talking about sequencing.
Before we get to sequencing, before you expatiate on sequencing, rapid test kits have been developed and have been deployed.
Yes.
Initially, there was a big debate as to whether or not we were going to accept the results of rapid tests.
Yes.
But now they are now being used even by the federal government.
In few states, just like the way she mentioned, in few states, and we don't have a national policy on a mandatory routine testing using rapid kits. So why can't we have a national policy on routine testing for the vulnerable? For example, for people that have, immunocompromised status of HIV, for tuberculosis, for pregnant women. So can we distribute this thing and have a national policy on testing or routine testing, just like the way you go to healthcare center, primary healthcare center, you get tested for malaria? Can we also, you asked my mentor on whether to differentiate between most of the signs and symptoms. The only thing that can be able to differentiate that is for us to have a national policy on routine testing, so that if somebody is passing diarrhea stool, you test him for COVID, you test him for malaria, you test him for other things. So we can be able to say, okay, let's have a national testing policy that COVID-19 becomes the first testing priority for any case of so A, B, C, D symptoms. And then from there, we can be able to nip it up. And then if the person is positive, we'll pick the samples for sequencing.
Let me quickly flip this to my colleague now. Ayo.
Thank you, Mokwe. Interestingly, both our panelists this morning are academics as well. The first question that comes to my mind right now, of course, to Professor, is, first of all, your primary constituency in the schools, the students themselves, what can you tell us about the level of acceptability or understanding of the issues that we are dealing with, especially concerning COVID-19, especially among the students that that you have to interface with on a daily basis?
Thank you so very much. We resumed on Monday. I was in the class yesterday. I can bet you that half of the students in the class were not wearing face masks. I had to enforce it to say that every student that is not wearing this face mask should go out and pick the face mask. You know, it's just lack of belief. I had to tell them that I have been vaccinated. I've taken my second dose. This is the issue of COVID-19. In fact, I was teaching introductory virology. I had to take 5 minutes to let them know the reason why they should wear face masks and pass the knowledge of what I was going to teach them. Do you know what? Even amongst colleagues, every day I find myself battling with them, trying to convince them that there is COVID-19. It's just lack of belief. Some colleagues, some medical doctors don't even believe in COVID-19. I don't just know why. Maybe because now I'm sure with this third wave, they are seeing people dying now. You know what? I want to let you know that it's because we are not telling ourselves the truth. Many Nigerians have been infected. We don't have the data. We are not telling them people die of COVID-19. They keep it secret. They will not say that this person has died of COVID-19. They will argue with me. What are the symptoms? We don't see anybody. Have you ever seen anybody in the hospital with COVID-19? They have never seen any patient. I'll tell them I'm a good example myself. I have been vaccinated. I've taken first and second dose. I know what it is. And there's nothing has happened to me. It's just, do you know what? The key, most important thing is that we have to communicate. We have to communicate the risk communication to the populace. We have to let them know that COVID-19 is real by telling the truth. Those that have died of COVID-19, I can tell you that I have lost a very, very close mentor to COVID-19 in the last week. But nobody is saying that that person died of COVID-19. So many people think that it is a hoax, it's lie, COVID-19 is not real. Even among colleagues, they feel that we have many false positive results, it is something else. The truth needs to be told. People should come out and say the truth. Maybe for the first time, I want to say it in national television. I was infected in November of COVID-19, and I know what the symptoms are, and I feel it. I think if we don't tell ourselves the truth, and if I'm able to say this on national television, if one or two persons listening to me and say, oh, if Professor Mariam was infected, and it means that she's saying the truth, I know the symptoms. People should come out and say the truth. If people die of COVID-19, Nigerians should be able to say these are the people that have died. We're not telling ourselves the truth. COVID-19 is real, but many people do not believe it among students, colleagues, lecturers. So we have, like we said, we have dropped our guard. That is why we open our borders. We allow people to come in without quarantining them, and this is what we are having now. In the last 1 week, the virus transmission of COVID-19 by PCR has increased from 1% to 3.4%. It means that in the next 1 month, there will be many more deaths due to COVID-19. Well, it is Prof, very, very important that we educate the public on COVID-19.
Yeah, well, you've raised so many issues even in this passionate response, but there are so many other things to deal with. How did we even get to the point where people don't believe the authorities any longer? Well, that's one of several things that we'll be looking at, but only when we return after this list of communication to you. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Dr. Ishaku, I'm pretty sure you are as concerned about the same issue, especially the fact that among students, it would seem like it's just business as usual. I mean, juxtapose that with the lead of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning that talks about so many NYSC members who are already tested and have been confirmed positive for COVID-19, among several others in the country. Perhaps the challenge then is, how are we communicating with everybody, especially the students?
So I thank you for bringing that to bear. I was part of a committee to actually speak with some young youth in the NYC camp in my state about COVID-19. And one of the things I have discovered a huge gap is that we need a targeted strategic communication for the youthful population. And how do we need to achieve that? Is to actually review our curriculum for health education. When we are coming up, we actually went through health education, but may I tell you now that health education is not taken as modules in our primary, secondary, and tertiary institution. And I think that we need to review that. I was thinking that before the lockdown or after the lockdown, we would have reviewed certain curriculums in our education curriculum and then make it mandatory for health education to be mandatory for all levels of education. So I see a very huge gap. I see a population of youths that are always on the internet and, garbaging in a lot of information, misinformation about COVID. Do you know that from my initial lecture with some COP members in the NYC camp, I asked them just to sample their opinion. How many of them believe that COVID-19 is real? Only 2% raise up their hand that COVID-19 is real. Some, I asked those that did not believe that COVID-19 is real, why do they think that COVID-19 is real? Some of them told us that it is a conspiracy theory from China. A lot of them attributed that to lack of social trust on the side of the government. It is a ploy for them to be, locked, over months, over weeks, and all what have you. So we need to actually communicate well, because we are dealing with a generation, a millennial generation, that spend more time on the internet than even with their colleagues physically. So they engage.
You raised a critical one there, Dr.
They get a lot of information.
But just 1 second, Dr. Ishaku, you raised a critical issue there. You mentioned distrust, of the authorities by the people, and it would seem like that distrust has gone so far as to, look, you know what? We don't even believe anything government says, anything the authorities say. They do not matter to us simply because we do not trust. And this is also now getting to a space where even if the information you are giving me is going to hurt me, I'm not going to believe you. Now, that's a very, very dangerous spot. I'm pretty sure you will agree. So how do we get out of that rut? Because it is one thing for us to give out information. Communicating that information, now that's another thing altogether.
So quite a valid question you've raised over there. So what we just need to do is, if I asked what was the role of National Orientation Agency in the fight of COVID, we've not seen their input so loud. And I think that the National Orientation Agency needs to actually step up in terms of bringing strategic framework in order to reach out in terms of the risk communication. The role of Ministry of Communication, Information is quite key. And I think that is what these two ministries need to come together and to be able to form synergy with the Nigerian Center for Disease Control and the National Primary Health Care. Come up with a model on how to be able to achieve that. They may also employ private sector to be able to drive that process. I am also thinking that we can be able to raise COVID-19 ambassadors. People like Maokwe can be able to be appointed as COVID-19 ambassadors. Professor Mariam over there can be appointed as COVID-19 ambassadors. We have a lot of religious leaders. We have a lot of celebrities that can be able to be appointed as COVID-19 ambassadors. So could we imagine that our youth trust information from BB Niger even more than from their government? So we need to overhaul and then begin to come up with a strategy to be able to reach out to this youthful population and begin to bring back the trust. So by and large, a lot of agencies that are saddled with the responsibility of communicating, they just have to come up with a strategic communication.
All right, Dr. Ishaku.
Indeed, COVID-19 has actually opened up gaps.
Yeah. Let me ask Professor Aminu, because one of the things that I've also seen is perhaps, you've talked about the fact that trust is a main issue. Could it be, Professor, that we speak above the people sometimes? about half the population of Nigerians are poor. They are dealing with so many, economic gaps, in their lives. That's on the one hand. Education, about the illiteracy level in the country. Could we have been speaking above these people and also, suffering from infodemics in line, or rather in cahoot with this pandemic?
Wow. Majority of individuals, they don't even listen. Like now, may not even have TV to listen to what we are discussing. Majority of them are in the remote areas. I think you are right to some extent. Like Dr. Akiala said, we need to communicate to the people that matter in the right language they will understand. It's not only to go to National Assembly or in Abuja, in a town hall and talk. Others, these populace that matter, most of them that go to the market, mix up, they don't listen to television. We need to find means of communicating to them, the means that they will understand. And that majority of these students and these populace, they believe those things they see in social media. They are not so enlightened enough that they will listen to what we are saying now. But what if one particular person, maybe their imam or the pastor, tells them this is it, or maybe the head of the family, and they believe that? It is very, very important that we communicate to those that matter in the language, in the way they will understand it, and we should communicate properly to them. I've had jingles. I've had write-up. The jingles in Hausa, in Yoruba, in English. Many of these people, they listen to radio. So they listen to me, they listen to that, but they don't watch televisions, they don't listen to, they don't come to attend all these maybe COVID-19 sensitization seminars. But we have to communicate to the populace that matter in the language and the way they will understand. I think that is very, very important. And then, we have problem. The problem why they disbelieve is because of what they see in the social media. Remember when it came to this vaccination, they were saying that when you put key, it will stick to your arm. When you put a lamp, they believe this so much, even among those that are enlightened. They believe everything they see in the social media. So we must find a way, just like Dr. Akiala said, for all those communication agencies to try and see that all these conspiracy theory, they counteract it, and they also go to social media to pass their message in social media where these individuals listen to. They should also strategize to find means of getting to these important people that will spread, if one person become infected, that will spread the virus in the community. They should also use the means for communicating of this, what do you call it, vaccine, vexers. They should also communicate using social media. I think that will solve the problem to some extent.
Well, that's the hope, of course, especially now that Twitter has been suspended. One wonders if that's something that government would be considering. But, one other issue along this line, Professor, that touches on, whether or not we're able to get ahead of the issue, would be the funding for the entire health sector and COVID-19 as well. We've talked about cholera outbreak. That's, the figures just seem to be, on the rise. Just how many hours or days ago we heard that there's this outbreak of some gastroenteritis in Sokoto State and so many others. And if you look at the budget for the nation this year, it's just 4.526% of the budget. Contrary to, something that should be more than 10%. And so one wonders if indeed, with that kind of paucity of funds, will we be able to do the core things of getting infrastructure, adequate infrastructure for the health sector? NARD members say, as far as they are concerned, we do not have enough isolation centers all over the nation. The personnel that should be dealt with, that should be treated fairly, the welfare for the people, the health workers who are on the front line of this war we are fighting. NARD members, for instance, now are on strike. And communicating these risks to the people. Do you think we have a funding challenge, or you think with what we have, we should be doing okay, Professor?
I can tell you that when it comes to health, we are underfunded. I don't know. I should think that health, it should be priority of the government. We should not have the NARD going on strike before the government see to their needs. These are important individuals that are the frontliners, that are fighting, that when you come to the hospital, these are the doctors you will see that will first of all receive individuals. They are putting their life to ensure that they save individuals. Just why can't the government think twice to say they should not even be demanding for their basic need? It should even be provided and given to them without asking. Like they said, it is true, we don't have many isolation centers. We don't even have the facilities. We don't have the personnel. I remember we don't even have all these things. I think when it comes to health, it should be the first thing, the paramount thing in the government, especially now that COVID-19, the third wave is coming. We are in the third wave. In fact, the first thing I think the government should do is to settle the NARD, to settle their demand. That should be the first thing, and ensure that all the oxygen demand is improved on. Everything concerning COVID-19, what we need to do, not even only COVID-19, surveillance is put in place. All the infrastructures are put in place for healthcare problems. This is very, very important. I see no reason why the government should not be providing what is needed to fight diseases. Perhaps maybe because they are not seeing the number of deaths that we have seen in other countries. I'm telling you that if they allow COVID-19 to spread in the community, we are going to have crisis in our hands. The healthcare will not be able, the facilities, our healthcare will not be able to take care of what is going to happen. So as it is, the government needs to scale up and ensure that they do the needful when it comes to improving and healthcare facilities, and demand of these doctors is very, very important. This is one thing I think they should take serious. They should take that very, very serious.
Okay. Well, one would be glad, of course, that the Presidential Steering Committee is doing all that they can. I mean, these issues of inadequate infrastructure is not unknown to the team, given the comments ascribed to the chairman of that team last year. But let me ask you, Dr. Ishaku, one of the issues around COVID-19 in Nigeria, as well as other health challenges that we have had in the sector, is that of research. A number of people have drawn concern about the vaccines. You are not unaware of that as well. Which one should I take? Which one should be mixed? Which one should not be mixed? And all those things. And then, is the Delta variant going to succumb to the power or the potency or efficacy of any of the vaccines that's making the rounds now, given that the first strain was the reason for which the vaccines that we're using now have been made. And this is the third strain, which we understand is the most virulent so far. So the issue of research in our country, is something that needs to be, that we need to give a little bit more attention, because one is wondering, on the one hand, we are saying people should go do the needful as far as COVID-19 is concerned. But then many people do not believe. And then the people are wondering, we're not dropping dead, we're not having so many fatalities in the country. Perhaps some research findings in our country could help to find out, okay, why are we having the kind of results that we're having, or are we just lucky?
So I agree with you that research is quite key in the fight of COVID-19. I hope you also understand, know that 21st century is a knowledge-driven century where research is quite key. Even vaccines that we are having now are product of research. Even testing kits that we are having now are product of research. So we need, just like Professor Maria, my mentor, said, we need funding. Research is quite key. In fact, funding should not only come from the government, funding should also come from private sectors, multinational companies, because this is 21st century, it's knowledge-driven. Gone are the days where we should have professors of mechanical engineering that should be able to fix our gearbox that are failing, not to be taking their cars to roadside mechanics. So this is quite key, that even the research component needs to be funded. If you go to advanced country in other climes, you find out that they have pumped billions of US dollars on research, and research is quite key. So, and research in the 21st century is multidisciplinary in nature. It is not only restricted or stereotyped to the core sciences. So people in social sciences are also involved. We need people to be telling us, why are people behaving the way they are behaving? Why are people not wearing face masks? So what is wrong with the behavioral changes? We also need people in the acts of communication to tell us, why are we failing to communicate well? So it's a whole lot. So I agree with you that funding should be key in the fight of COVID-19. But the sad reality is this. Over the time, I've checked a lot of platforms and a lot of lexicon in terms of journal publications. I've not seen quite strong data emanating from Nigeria or published by researchers in high impact factor journals because of funding. One of my mentors called me yesterday evening and he was telling me that one of his papers was accepted to be published. And the publication fee was $2,000. And he calculated that that's close to ₦1 million. And that's his salary for 6 months. And then he has to pay by himself. So you find out that it's quite a whole lot. You go to our university today, you discover that we are graduating people in the core sciences that have never had expertise or skills in terms of laboratory diagnosis, in terms of testing, in terms of bringing out analytical skills. We need to actually fund research, not only because of COVID, because of other infectious diseases. I was involved in cholera outbreak in my state some weeks ago. I can tell you that there are more deeper issues than cholera that we are seeing. And funny enough, cholera, issues of gastroenteritis are disease of poverty, because the government needs to provide potable drinking water for their citizens. But barely in most state capitals, they don't even have potable running waters. Most of them, the pipes that are being laid on the ground have expired, have gotten rotted, and then, they are contaminated. Nobody is checking the quality of water that people use. You see proliferations of boreholes, and even boreholes are being sunk closer to so there are a lot. So we need to fund research, and it's quite a lamentation. You can see even from my expression. I am coming from the academic background that funding of research is something that we need to actually look into it, and then be able to see for the way forward. So in the coming days, could you imagine COVID has stayed with us for over a year? No any Nigerian was able to provide or design a testing kit that is localized to us.
Yeah, some people will say that sometimes maybe that people in-house to have also neglected opportunities. For instance, TED Fund, they have been calling for researchers. They have been asking they're willing to now fund more researchers. I do not know if there's been, will I say, a change of focus to some in-house institutions who will be willing to fund research.
So, Mark, we've gotten COVID now for over a year. Have you ever heard that a beneficiary of a TED fund for COVID research? Or you heard of a beneficiary of NCDC grants?
No, the question is, have we applied?
No, so the issue is that we need more windows to be opened. Mark, maybe this is a national TV, but let me just lay this cut out. There are a lot of policies also, politics also in terms of disbursing funding for research in Nigeria. Sometimes it's not by merits. Sometimes we even disperse funding research grants based on regions, based on federal character. It's not supposed to be so. Funding for research should be merit-driven. I was just watching this morning discovery of 2022 model of a lot of cars, and a lot of marine biologists have to travel down to snap octopus, their eyes, to look at how they design headlamps, and then come back to the lab and design, and this is how we get models of phones and all what have you. We need to fund research on merit grounds in this country so that we can be able to have made in Nigerian goods, made in Nigerian products, so that it is quite key. We have talent, we have people. Nigeria is endowed by human resources that needs platforms. We also need multinational companies. We are talking about strategic communication. So I may ask, what is the role of our telecoms even in dishing out information for COVID? I should be able to check my balance of my MTN card or Glo or Airtel, and then beneath the card, I should be able to say a capture that talks about COVID, like that. I should be able to say that we can be able to do a GIS mapping. The moment you enter your Facebook, by default, your status or your profile picture should change to a COVID status.
So
that can be done.
There are many suggestions. Maybe they need to just have more heads on the table. Let me quickly ask Professor Aminu, as we now wrap up, whether she'd like to add anything to the talk on research, and whether there have been any attempts in-house to try and get from Nigerian institutions who are willing to fund research. That's one. And the second, whether she agrees that the incentives been given, or disincentives more or less, especially for those who are coming from international trips. You did hear the SGF, I don't know if you heard him, towards the end of the report we played on this program, saying that there will be sanctions, restrictions on people who do not go back for their 7-day testing, 6 months restrictions on the international passport, and for those who do not observe the quarantine, 1-year restriction on the international passport, whether you consider that a sufficient disincentive for people, or incentive more or less, I don't know, whichever way you want to read it now, for people to be able to observe the protocols, especially those who are coming from international travels. Prof.
Thank you, Mope. Well, I want to say that maybe Dr. Ishaka may not be aware of it. I and some other group, that is late Professor David Olaleye, that passed on last Tuesday. That was a week, about 8 days ago. He was the principal investigator of a TED fund grant we received to develop a simple PCR kit to test for COVID-19. We got that research grant and we are working on it. In ABU, some individuals, we applied for some research grant concerning COVID-19. Unfortunately, some people didn't get it because of the bottleneck, because of the reasons he mentioned. There are a lot of bottleneck and so many things concerning getting the TED fund grant. I think those should be improved on. As he said, it should be based on merit. But there is one that is ongoing to develop a simple PCR kit. And we're on it. Late, may he so rest in peace. Though he passed on, he was the principal investigator. And concerning the incentive or lack of incentive, I think the first thing, what they should do is that they should ensure that they quarantine the travelers that are coming from this red alert country. Putting the sanction I think is quite okay, but then they should ensure that it applies across all categories of people. one thing, I can. My brother came back from Turkey. He was quarantined. I was so happy, and I told him it's good for you. You should be quarantined because it's a red alert country where the Delta variant is very, very common. He was quarantined. He did the test. He repeated the test after 7 days. But what I want to say is that if they have to implement that, they should implement it across all board. Everybody should go through the same treatment. They should not just say, because this person is this, to allow some people to go. I think that is where we miss it. That is where we got this COVID-19, this Delta variant tonight, because they allowed some people to leave while they quarantine some people. Thank you so very much.
Prof, I have to thank you so much for your contributions on our program this morning. Professor Miriam Aminu is the head of Department of Microbiology at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, and also the Deputy Dean, Faculty of Life Sciences at the same university. Thank you so much for speaking with us this morning. And Dr. Akielia Ishaku is an epidemiologist and also a senior lecturer at the Nasarawa State University. Thank you so much for coming, Dr. Ishaku. Well, we'll have to take a break at this moment. When we come back, we'll be sinking our teeth into another issue. Please stay with us.
Well, there's absolutely nothing to add other than to just engage the issue straight away. Lieutenant Commander John Danjuma joins us. He's a retired Navy intelligence officer. He joins us virtually this morning. Thanks for joining us. Well, first of all, with all that you have heard in that report, literally a chronicle of activities across various regions of the country and different types of insecurity issues. The first question that comes to mind is, I thought intelligence was supposed to get ahead of these issues so they don't happen.
Well, I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear. Please go ahead.
All right. Good morning, Ayo and the viewers. What intelligence do you need more than what has been given? You know, I have noticed that there are two sets of people who advise government. There are those who, because of their business interests, you know, tend to try to determine which direction, you know, the government would want them to profile solutions, and they go ahead and do it. Why do I say that? I remember since 1999, one group of security and intelligence personnel has been saying that there has been in history no federation that doesn't have at least two, but ideally 3 levels of policing. And consistently, I have been in that group saying that for you to effectively police, which means to prevent crime and criminality in any society, you have to have boots on the ground. You have to have those who are the agents, government agencies, you know, on the ground. But consistently, government has listened to the other group. The other group has said, no, if you allow the governors, for example, to have state police, they would use the policemen against their political opponents. Well, we don't agree with that kind of reasoning, but even if it was true, supposing they would use the policemen against their political opponents, are you saying that the value of their political opponents is higher than the generality of the public? You know, so if you put the security of politicians higher or above that of the community or the society in which we live, are you not going to get the kind of situation that we now have? And surprisingly, I don't know why sometimes we need to bring out the video clips of people, people highly respected in the security and intelligence field that were in the past saying that state police, is an anomaly. State police cannot hold in Nigeria for this and that. But suddenly, now that they have seen that the politicians are open and that the politicians have been forced by the reality on the ground anyway, they are now changing their story and saying that, oh, it's okay to have state police. So I believe that consistently there has been intelligence, there has been the right values, that the right kind of advice given to the people in government. But the people in government only tend to listen to those whose professionalism is to find out, oh, which direction are the people in government likely to listen to, and they follow suit. So intelligence is there. Nigerian people, are patriotic. They live in peace, and they want to live in peace until the politicians come, to divide and misrule them.
Well, that in saying this, Colonel, perhaps the understanding that is being communicated is that the authorities know what to do and they refuse to do it. That's hard to believe, and some would say a very harsh one, wouldn't you say?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way, that they know what to do, but they refuse to do it. I would rather say they put their own personal interests over and above that of the people that they should protect. If you check, was it the House of Reps not long ago, when the solution we proffered, one of the solutions we proffered for the kind of clashes we have where, marauders, night marauders would just suddenly break into communities, to slaughter people, and go away. The solution we offered, and which we want to repeat here, is that if you cannot remove the guns from criminals in their hundreds to go around killing people, then you shouldn't prevent the innocent people from protecting themselves with the guns that they should carry. Not long afterwards, there was turmoil. Do I say turmoil? But there was a great, great resistance from the House of Reps. The individual, one of the House of Reps members that tried to bring that matter up, had to backslide. He couldn't stand for what he believed in. And the other member that was called, because two of them on both sides of the debate were called, to one station. But we were disappointed because he couldn't come based on the massive resistance from the House of Reps, against that. But you can see that it's because those who are there in government have protection all around them. I always ask, faced with the choice, for example, in that edifice you are staying, faced with the choice of having a fire-fighting system that automatically responds once there is smoke or any tendency towards fire, that fire that has been installed, firefighting equipment that has been installed in that edifice will immediately start fighting the fire. That is on one hand. On the other hand, you need to depend on the fire service to come in with their trucks to fight that fire. Which would you choose? Of course, it is better to have in the localities, to have on the ground those who would immediately defend you. And because it is impossible for us, based on our income, to add more personnel. If you want to add more security personnel in the country today, it will take time. That is one. So response time will increase. Secondly, it will take more funds. Why don't we allow the communities, to defend themselves? It's no big deal, for you to carry a gun, for you to teach even kids. We've seen some communities where children 5 years old, are taught how to handle guns. But today in Nigeria, we so much believe that once the people in government have been protected, then all is well. But all is not well as we can see. We need people to be able to protect themselves.
Yeah, isn't that a little dangerous? I mean, considering that to give arms to children in any community?
You just misunderstand me. The point I am making is this, that communities, that giving guns to people to protect themselves is not a negative thing. It's not something that is dangerous, because there are communities, violent communities, where you see children. Even the ability to operate a gun, is you don't need to be very intelligent. That's just what I want to say, to be able to operate a gun.
One wonders if that wasn't the reason for all those community interventions that the state governments initiated, the Amotekons of this world, the Ebubeagos of this world, the Hizbas of this world. Do you think, is that in any way saying that those haven't been effective, or maybe the operationalizing them has been an issue?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, you are saying that despite the efforts, by establishing the Amotekons and the Hizba or the other kinds of interventions,
yes,
we still have what we have.
Yes.
If that is what you mean, then that is not exactly what we are proposing. There is no use reinventing the wheel. We already have many variants of a federal structure. And we even have the ideal, or the one closest to the ideal, the American system, which has worked very well, for its people. Today, if you go into the United States, you carry a gun, either as an individual or a group of individuals, and you set out, to slaughter people the way it's done in Nigeria. In all likelihood, you are not going back home. You're either going to the great beyond, or you are ending up in the police cell. But in Nigeria, it is so common. So to go back to the state police, which I want to say, state police is completely different from the regional Amotekun and from the Hizba. We need highly trained and disciplined people, to be able to prevent crime and criminality. As you can see, there are different ways that crime and criminality shows its face. I was just talking to a relation, a few minutes ago, and he is saying that what happened in Jos yesterday can be termed, tribal and religious conflict, and that it has been on, for example, for the past 6 months, skirmishes going on, and only the police was able to step in once in a while to intervene and prevent further destruction. But yesterday it escalated to the extent that, there was mass killings, and people, are now finding it difficult even to go out in Jos City. So if you go to another place, Southeast, you see it's a different kettle of fish. Police stations like your station reeled out the different ways that crime and criminality, show themselves. But it's important for us to note that there is a direct correlation between high number of poor people, destitute. I always want to make that point, that if you have half of your population destitute, and by destitute, I mean, if you go around, I was going not too long ago behind the barrack, Ikeja cantonment, going towards Oshodi. You see that there are hundreds of people that do not have places to defecate. They defecate right there. You don't have a place to put your head on. You don't have food to eat. But even beyond all that, you don't have hope. If you have people like that and they are young and strong, if they see vehicles trapped in holdups, in go slow, they will use those opportunities to break into the vehicles and take anything of value that they can see and eat. You know, so
you've taken on a number of things. My apologies, Commander. You've talked about. So let me just ask you, what you think should be prioritized: economy, our politics, or governance? Because it would seem like in all of the conversations you've talked around each of these issues. And if you feel it's the three of them, economy, politics, governance, in what order should we be giving priority to these things?
Well, can you really separate governance with economics and politics? If you have bad governance, you would have people destitute, you know, and then the politics, you know, would become monetized like you now have, you know. So they are a tripod, you know, on which this criminality stands strongly in this nation. But if you want to solve the situation, you have to start from governance. That is the head. You know, I always say that if there is lack of money, which what recession is, and then the government does not start the pruning from itself, and then starts taxing the people even more, because if you check, the COVID-19 gave excuses to many governments around the world, you know, to print money. But as I said the other day, when you print money in the US, you put it in the hands of poor people, and they have been so enriched that they don't even want to go to work again. But in Nigeria, you increase the level of misery. So what we want to see is, let me even be very clear, starting from the top. The American president, for example, feeds himself. It's not the taxpayer of the Americans that feed the American president. In Nigeria, millions, I've forgotten the figure, are used to feed Mr. President. He can do without it. Then you can check the British Prime Minister. The British Prime Minister doesn't have one single aircraft allocated to his office, and that's the first world. And that, for example, you have over a dozen aircraft, you know, used by the top people in government. You know, there are many areas that you can see that are glaring, that the people in government can start making sacrifices. And the cost of governance, Peter Obi has been saying that, look, we can really, without collecting any loans from anybody, with the present value of the present crude oil production quantity that we are selling oil, you know, it's able to sustain us, you know, if we grossly and dramatically and drastically reduce the cost of governance. So if these areas are not done, if you as the leaders, you don't lead by way of making sacrifices for the people, it is not possible for the people, you know, to have anything, you know, left for themselves. And it becomes a jungle, you know. So people's desires must be met. We must realize that nations that give, the dole, they give welfare to their wretched people, they are not foolish nations, because as we have seen, the most dangerous person is he who has nothing to protect. And as Samuel Johnson said, the true test of civilization is a decent provision for the poor. If you have desperate, destitute, hopeless people, there is no security system. There is no brain work. There is no intelligence work that will prevent that person from committing crime. We get to know that. And we need to know that the oil wealth has been placed in this country so that it will reach the poorest people. So let us start remembering that the way to solve the problems, all the skirmishes, all the criminality, all the evil in the nation, is to turn around and begin to look at how we have treated the Nigerian people. We have not treated them in a way that will make them
Well, solving the poverty problem, Lieutenant Commander, you would agree with me, is quite a tall order. Even though the president said in 2018 that there is a plan to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty over the next 10 years in collaboration with the states. So, solving that poverty problem is quite a tall order, and the figures will increase as economic woes or challenges continue. So, what kind of partnership would you want to see, especially with the states, in solving the poverty problem? Many times when we talk about government, a whole lot of times people look to the federal government. But then there is a responsibility for the state government. So what kind of intervention do you expect to see from the states? What kind of collaborations would you consider vital now, especially with the federal government, between the federal government and the states?
Yes, it's good also to state that it is with valid reasons that the federal government that consumes over 50%, at least 52% of the oil wealth, should actually do much more than it's doing. Imagine all these 36 states, and I think including the federal capital, get just 20-something%, about half of what the federal government gets, and then all the local governments, maybe 17% or so. So what the point is this, that the federal government needs to lead by way of example, and then the states too can follow suit. But for me, I am thinking that if there is bitumen, for example, in a state, why is it that that state cannot go ahead and mine what is on the ground and utilize it to benefit its people? Which kind of federation are we having that you have to go to Abuja? And why should the Minister of Mines, or solid minerals, have more powers over the minerals that exist in a state? So there are areas where we still believe that the federal government is too strong. They are having their hands in too many pies, and they need to shed weight. So people who are talking about the evolution of powers have a very solid point, in my view, in trying to solve the economic problems of this nation. We need to see that the states, the hands of the state governors, if they need an excuse, they can profile a valid excuse, or even reason that they are not able to make any income because they are not able to have a direct influence on how the minerals or resources in their states, are handled and made to benefit the people that they lead. So at the end of the day, it's common for the states to not really benefit the people. The other day, I made an example of having title documents. I'm talking to you now from Ogun State. A few years ago, during the era of the past governor, who is now a senator, some moves were made, and they came, collected some money from us, and asked us to do some papers that they were going to give us land title documents. As I speak with you, that has not been done. And remember, if you truly want to help the people from the states, one of the things you can do is to help them to have papers that they can present as in the bank, at the banks, as collateral, so that they can have money, to engage in businesses. These are the areas we think that state governors can make a difference in the lives of their people. And what stops a governor, for example, from building a cement factory? If you check the roads around where we are today, in areas like Akute, some bridges were constructed by the governor, and it got to a stage, and he said that because of the recession, he could not continue. So the question we have always asked ourselves is, in the past, we've had state governors having cement factories. Cement today, which is one of the things you will need to put a roof over the head of they have consistently told us it's 17 million, but now it should be more than that. Nigerians that are that need homes to stay in. So what stops a governor that has
there are so many issues that one would want to look at on this matter, because I mean, even the governor's issue that you raised, so many interests in that one as well, but we're completely out of time right now. We have to thank you very much for your time and thoughts on this issue of insecurity in various areas across the nation. Lieutenant Commander John Danjuma is a retired Navy intelligence officer. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Ogun State. A few messages that came from you as well, your contribution to the program. Begin with this one. Timi Afolabi's mail on insecurity in Nigeria. Until government at all levels put prevention above cure when it comes to insecurity in Nigeria, insecurity challenges will continue to persist. In achieving the above, intelligence gathering, state and local policing must become top priorities.
Well, Professor Nakena has this one. He says, National Assembly holds the ace to checkmate the insecurities that pervade the country. They have to review the laws on security by removing it from the exclusive list to concurrent list to enable the decentralization of security architecture to include community and state police.
Well, Ohiemi Matthias says about the same issue, I'm of the opinion that the state police should be under the control of the chief judge of the state. Well, interesting, Matthias. Wouldn't that make the judiciary executive?
Interesting point there. Well, look at this one from Kenneth Abiro, and he says, talking about COVID-19 third wave, I struggle to blame the inhabitants of Nigeria for not caring much about the COVID-19 pandemic story, even though it is real. The country and the people are facing many challenging issues: insecurity, unemployment, hunger, etc., for example. Therefore, the populace do not, at least in my own observation, consider the COVID-19 pandemic as a matter of urgency. More so, the governed seem not to trust their government anymore. And this is a dangerous development. That's from Kenneth.
Jared Yamiu says, on information deficiency, Nigerians did follow daily updates of COVID-19 cases on Twitter. Many people will be awake till as late as 11:30 p.m. to have the graphic representation from NCDC. But with the ban, Nigerians have lost both daily updates and total information on COVID-19. The federal government must reconsider its stand on Twitter because it's a major source of information for Nigerians. But it's also
Oshino Kingsley has this one to say, talking about the Delta variant. Now, you won't believe that the health workers that carried out the last COVID-19 vaccination exercise have not been compensated. Government officials and politicians only come on TV to paint how beautiful our health facilities are, but run overseas when they have a headache. This country is not getting it right.
Well, Jamalala says, on curtailing COVID-19 in Nigeria, many Nigerians don't understand the magnitude of the effect of COVID-19 because many don't have access to adequate information about the virus, especially those in the rural areas. I believe government and the media organizations should form a synergy on how to get information across to the people on how to curtail the spread of the virus, most especially those in rural communities and our inner cities. It is also important for government to invest heavily in testing kits and also come up with stiff sanctions to monitor those coming in to the country from red alert zones. So those who would also say, how about the website of the NCDC?
Well, Victor Owo has this one to say on the doctor's strike. He did admit that he got a little teary-eyed listening to us this morning. He says, is this not the same Nigeria that the Saudi monarch flew in to visit UI Teaching Hospital in the past? And that's not, fiction. That's actually very true. That happened in the past. If our lawmakers put it to law that no public officer should go on medical tourism, I assure you that our hospitals will improve and terms of service for doctors will change automatically. Who will bail the cat and stop all these strikes? When this sore festers, we will keep losing our best to other countries of the world. That's what Victor Owo is writing in. Well, Ayo, you did speak about brain drain in the 80s. I can tell you that brain drain is alive and well in our medical sector in Nigeria. It's alive and well in many sectors, but it is particularly pressing in the healthcare sector. I mean, I do know a deputy CMD in a hospital who says her biggest headache is having to deal with resignations of members of staff who almost on a daily basis are putting in their papers. What are we going to do to stop it? Certainly food for thought this morning. Thank you so much for watching and thank you for your contributions. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Ayo Makine. Have a wonderful day and keep safe.